Welcome back to Mr. David Love Stories, my beautiful family. I am so happy to see you here today, whether you are joining us for the first time or you have been part of this family for a while. I want you to know that you are exactly where you are meant to be right now. Today, I have a story that is going to stay with you long after it ends. A story about a woman who thought she had made the biggest mistake of her life, and a man who refused to let her go. So settle in, get comfortable, and let me take you on a journey you will never forget. But before we begin, let me drop you right into the moment that changed everything. The rain was falling in sheets across Manhattan. Isla stood outside the penthouse building, her hair plastered to her face, her chest heaving with sobs she could not control. In her trembling hand, she clutched a crumpled tabloid, the pages bleeding ink as the rain destroyed them. But she had already memorized every word, every lying, heartbreaking word. Her phone buzzed again, the 17th missed call. She stared at his name on the screen. Dominic, her husband, the man she had trusted with everything, and then the call connected. She had not meant to answer it. Her thumb had slipped, or maybe her heart had betrayed her one final time. His voice came through, desperate, raw. Isla, please, let me explain. Those photographs are not what they look like. She laughed, but it came out as a sob. That is what they all say, Dominic. Every lying husband since the beginning of time. I am not lying to you. I have never lied to you. Whatever else this marriage is, that has always been true. Then why did I have to find out from a tabloid that you were with her while I was 300 feet underwater, documenting creatures no one has ever seen? You were in Paris with Victoria, your ex, the woman you almost married before me. The silence on the other end was devastating. Dominic, she whispered, her voice cracking. I trusted you. I know, he said, and his voice broke too. I know you did, and I am asking you to trust me one more time, just once more. Isla, let me prove to you that what we have is real. She closed her eyes, the rainy behin teasing with her tears. How can I trust you when everything I have ever believed about us might be a lie? Because, he said, and she could hear him struggling to hold himself together, because I love you. I love you in a way I did not know I was capable of, and I would burn my entire empire to the ground before I would ever hurt you. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it felt like her chest was caving in. Prove it, she whispered. Prove that you are not like everyone else who has ever left me. And what he said next changed everything. Then come home, Isla, come home to me, and I will show you exactly how far I am willing to go for the woman I love. No, my beautiful family, I know you are wondering how they got here. How did a struggling marine biologist end up married to one of the most powerful men in the world? How did one reckless night lead to this moment of devastating heartbreak? Let me take you back to where it all began. Back to a night when the stars aligned, the champagne flowed, and two lonely souls found each other against all odds. But before I do, I need to ask you something. If you believe in love that defies logic, if you believe that sometimes the biggest mistakes turn into the greatest blessings, then hit that subscribe button right now. Join this family because this story is going to make you believe in fate again. No, let us begin. The research vessel Aurora rocked gently in the harbor as Isla Mercer stood in her cramped cabin, staring at the dress hanging on the back of her door. It was emerald green, purchased 3 years ago at a consignment shop, and she had already worn it to every fundraising event she had ever attended. The zipper stuck halfway up. There was a small tear near the hem that she had fixed with thread that did not quite match, but it was all she had. She pressed her hand against the porthole window, watching the lights of the coastal conservation gala glittering on the harbor. Yachts lined the marina like gleaming white teeth. Limousines deposited women in gowns that cost more than her annual salary. Men in tuxedos laughed too loudly, their watches catching the light. Her world and theirs existed in parallel, occasionally intersecting but never truly merging. Her phone buzzed on the narrow bunk. Dr. Hartwell's message was characteristically blunt. Charm the donors tonight, Mercer, or start looking for another vessel. Isla sighed, running her fingers through her salt-stiffened hair. She had not had time to wash it properly. There was still a faint smell of diesel on her skin from repairing the dive compressor that morning. Her hands were rough and calloused, not soft like the women she would be mingling with tonight, but funding was funding, and the Aurora needed new sonar equipment desperately. She pulled on the dress, fought with the zipper, and examined herself in the small mirror bolted to the wall. Her reflection stared back at her, wild auburn hair that refused to cooperate, green eyes that had seen things most people would never witness, the kind of beauty that came from living close to nature rather than fighting against it. She did not belong at galas. She belonged underwater, suspended in the blue silence, documenting creatures that existed in a world untouched by human complications. But tonight she would pretend. The gala was held at the Lighthouse Estate, a historic property perched on the cliffs overlooking the harbour. As Isla approached the entrance, she felt the familiar sensation of being out of place. The doorman glanced at her dress, and she saw the slight hesitation before he checked her name against the list. Inside, the ballroom was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across marble floors. Champagne towers rose like monuments to excess. The air smelled of expensive perfume and money. Isla took a glass of champagne from a passing server, grateful for something to do with her hands. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, present but unseen. A shadow among people who had never known what it meant to struggle. She paused near a window, watching the lighthouse beam sweep across the dark water. Out there, beneath those waves, were the creatures she loved, the bioluminescent organisms that created their own light in the darkness, the ancient ecosystems that had existed long before humans walked the earth and would continue long after they were gone. That was where she belonged. No, here, you look like you are calculating escape routes. The voice came from behind her, low and amused. Isla turned, a sharp retort ready on her lips. But the words died when she saw him. He was tall, with dark hair that the ocean breeze from the open terrace had slightly dishevelled. His eyes were the colour of the deep Atlantic, grey-green and impossibly observant. His tuxedo fit him like it had been sculpted to his body. And yet, despite his obvious wealth, there was something in his expression that seemed almost as out of place as she felt. 3, actually, she heard herself say. The service entrance, the dock ladder, and a dramatic leap into the harbour. His laugh was unexpected, warm and genuine, cutting through the pretension surrounding them. I would recommend the dock ladder, he said. The water temperature this time of year would make the dramatic leap considerably less romantic than you are imagining. You sound like you speak from experience. Let us just say I have learned the hard way that impulse decisions in cold water rarely end well. He extended his hand. Dominic Ashford. The name hit her like a rogue wave. Ashford Maritime, the company that had pioneered sustainable shipping practices across 3 continents. The company whose charitable arm had funded her research vessel for the past 2 years. She was talking to the man who essentially paid her salary, and she had just told him she was planning to escape his gala. Isla Mercer, she managed, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. I believe your family's foundation pays my salary. Does it? Interest sharpened his features. And what exactly does my family's foundation get for its investment? Something in his tone, in the genuine curiosity behind the question, made her forget to be diplomatic. Documentation of declining coral reef ecosystems and the shipping lanes that accelerate their destruction. She had not meant for her voice to carry such an edge. But exhaustion and champagne had loosened her usual restraint. Rather than taking offence, Dominic's smile deepened. Direct, he said. I like that. Most people here tell me what they think I want to hear. Most people here want something from you, and you do not. Isla considered the question honestly. I want you to stop your cargo ships from dumping ballast water in protected marine zones. But I suspect that is not what you meant. Something flickered in his ocean-coloured eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or appreciation. Walk with me, Isla Mercer. I find I want to hear more about how my company is destroying your precious reefs. He said it without defensiveness, without the bristling ego she had expected from a man of his position. There was genuine interest in his voice. And something else. Something that looked almost like loneliness. Against her better judgment, she walked. They wandered from the ballroom to a quiet terrace, then down a winding path to the lighthouse itself. The party faded to a distant murmur. The only sounds were the crash of waves against rocks and the slow sweep of the lighthouse beam. Isla found herself talking, in a way she rarely did, about the hydrothermal vents she had documented off the coast of Iceland, about the deep-sea creatures that created their own light in the eternal darkness, about the desperate race to catalogue species before they disappeared forever. "You love it," Dominic observed quietly, as dawn began painting the horizon in shades of rose and gold. "The ocean. It is not just a job for you. It is everything." She had not meant to sound so vulnerable, but something about the early morning light, the champagne still warming her blood, and the way he listened made her defenses crumble. "When I am underwater," she continued, "I am part of something larger than myself, something ancient and beautiful and utterly indifferent to human nonsense. Down there, nothing matters except the next breath, the next discovery, the next moment of absolute wonder." Dominic was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with something she could not quite identify. "That sounds liberating." "It is." She turned to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What about you? Do you love your work?" A shadow crossed his handsome features. "I inherited my work." Love rarely enters the equation. The raw honesty in his voice struck something deep within her. Here was a man who had everything the world considered valuable: power, wealth, influence. And yet, beneath the polished surface, she could see the same isolation she felt every day. "That sounds incredibly lonely," she said softly. For a moment, his mask slipped entirely, and what she saw beneath it made her chest ache. "It was," he said, "until tonight." The air between them changed, charged with something electric and dangerous. Isla knew she should step back. This man was her funder, her employer in a roundabout way. Getting involved with him was career suicide, personal disaster, the kind of impulse decision she had spent her entire adult life avoiding. But then he was stepping closer, his hand rising to touch her cheek, and she forgot every reason why this was a terrible idea. "May I?" he whispered. Yes, the kiss began tentatively, a question rather than a statement, but it quickly deepened into something more, a desperate recognition of kindred spirits who had somehow found each other across impossible distances. When they finally broke apart, breathless and stunned, the sun had risen fully over the harbour. "Come with me," Dominic said, his voice husky with emotion. "Where? Anywhere, everywhere. Just do not let this night end yet." Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was madness. She barely knew him. He was Dominic Ashford. She was a marine biologist who could barely afford her rent. But as she looked into his eyes, blazing with a loneliness that matched her own, Isla made the kind of impulsive decision she had sworn off years ago. "Anywhere," she echoed, her heart thundering in her chest. His smile was answer enough. The private plane was unlike anything Isla had ever experienced. Cream leather seats, crystal glasses filled with champagne that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, windows that framed the clouds like they were paintings. She should have felt out of place. Instead, wrapped in the warm glow of whatever was happening between them, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Where are we going?" she asked, watching the lights of the city disappear beneath them. "Monaco." Dominic handed her a glass. "There is something I want to show you. You are taking me to Monaco to show me something. Is that a problem?" Isla laughed, the champagne making everything feel slightly unreal. "A few hours ago, I was scraping barnacles off dive equipment. No, I am on a private jet to Monaco with a man I just met, having second thoughts." She looked at him, at the hope and uncertainty warring in his expression, and felt something shift in her chest. Third and fourth thoughts, actually. "But I am still here." Something like relief flooded his features. "Good." They talked as the plane crossed the dark Atlantic. Really talked, in a way Isla rarely allowed herself. She told him about growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes that never quite felt like hers, about the community center teacher, who had recognized her intelligence and fought for her scholarships, about the underwater photography class that had changed her life, showing her a world beneath the waves where she finally felt she belonged. In return, Dominic told her about growing up in the shadow of an empire he had never asked for, about a father who measured love in profit margins and a mother who had died when he was 12, leaving him alone in a world that saw him only as an heir. "No one has ever asked me about her," he said quietly. "My mother, what was she like? Kind. The only person who ever made me feel like I was enough just as I was." He paused, his voice thickening. "She used to take me to the beach when I was small. We would collect shells, and she would tell me stories about the creatures that lived inside them. I think that is why I was so drawn to your work. To you, there is something about the way you talk about the ocean that reminds me of her." Isla reached for his hand without thinking. The gesture felt natural, necessary. "She sounds wonderful." She was. He squeezed her fingers gently. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said I was too serious, that I needed someone who could make me see the world differently. And do I make you see the world differently?" Dominic lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "You make me see everything differently." Monaco at dawn was breathtaking. The Mediterranean stretched sapphire blue beneath them as the plane descended. The city clung to the cliffs like a jewel, glittering with the first light of morning. A limousine waited on the tarmac, whisking them through streets that were just beginning to wake. Isla pressed her face to the window like a child, drinking in every detail. "First time?" Dominic asked, amused. "First time in Europe. First time in Europe. First time in a limousine. First time doing anything remotely this insane." "Good." He took her hand again, threading his fingers through hers. "I want to give you a lot of firsts." The suite at the Hotel de Paris occupied an entire floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the harbor where mega-yachts bobbed gently. The bed was the size of her entire cabin on the Aurora. The bathroom had a tub she could swim, laps in. "This is too much," Isla said, but she was laughing. "Dominic, this is absolutely insane. Too much would be the penthouse. This is merely excessive. Is there a difference?" "About 6,000 square feet and a private pool." They ordered breakfast, ate it on the terrace, and then set out to explore the city like tourists. They wandered through narrow streets lined with designer boutiques. Though Dominic insisted, they skip the high-end shops in favor of a tiny bakery where an elderly woman made croissants that melted on the tongue. They played roulette at the Casino de Monte Carlo, where Isla accidentally won €3,000 on her first bet and immediately donated it to a startled server. "He looked like he needed it more than I did," she said when Dominic raised an eyebrow. "You are the most unusual woman I have ever met. Is that a compliment?" "It is a statement of fact, but also, yes, very much a compliment." As the day faded into evening, they found themselves at a small seaside restaurant, watching the sunset turn the Mediterranean to liquid gold. "Can I ask you something?" Isla said, twirling pasta around her fork. "Anything?" "Why me? You could have anyone. Women who understand your world, who know which fork to use at dinner, who do not show up to galas in dresses they bought at consignment shops. Why spend all this time and money on a marine biologist you just met?" Dominic set down his wine glass, his expression suddenly serious. "Do you know what the hardest part of having money is?" Isla shook her head. "Never knowing if people see you or just your bank account. Every relationship I have ever had, every friendship, every romantic entanglement, I have always wondered if they would be there if the money disappeared tomorrow. If I were just Dominic, just a man, would anyone stay?" He reached across the table, taking her hand. "And then last night you looked at me like I was exactly that. Just a man standing next to a woman at a party. You did not know who I was. You did not care about my last name. You just saw me." She felt tears prick her eyes. "I know what that is like," she whispered, "being invisible, having people look right through you because you are not worth anything to them. Then we are both seeing each other clearly, for the first time in a very long time." The champagne flowed as they moved from the restaurant to a jazz club, swaying together on the dance floor. Isla moved with natural grace, her years on boats giving her an instinctive sense of rhythm. Dominic matched her with surprising skill. Ballroom lessons, he explained when she commented, part of the Ashford finishing school experience. Is there anything you cannot do? He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her ear. Fall out of love with you. I suspect that is going to be quite impossible. They stumbled out of the club hours later, the night sky blazing with stars, and their heads spinning with wine and something far more intoxicating. The chapel appeared on the corner like a mirage. It was small and white, with a wooden door carved with hearts and a neon sign that promised ceremonies in 12 languages. Isla stopped walking, staring. We could, Dominic said quietly, following her gaze. We could not, she countered, but there was no conviction in her voice. We could. He turned her to face him, his expression suddenly serious despite the champagne clouding both their minds. What if we did, Dominic? We met yesterday. I have made business decisions in less time that shape the rest of my life. Why should this be any different? Because this is marriage. This is forever. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she had not realized she was crying. What if forever is exactly what I want? You do not even know me. I know that you love the ocean so deeply. You have dedicated your life to protecting it. I know that you see beauty where, if there is any chance at all, I want to be ready. You are insane completely. His eyes shone with tears. But only for you. They tumbled into their suite as dawn was breaking, laughing and crying and kissing, with the desperate joy of two people who had just done something absolutely mad and did not regret it for after years of drowning. He pressed his forehead to hers. I know that I have spent my entire life waiting for someone who makes me feel the way you do. Isla closed her eyes, the world spinning around her. This was insane, reckless. The kind of impulsive decision that destroyed lives. But when had she ever done anything just because it felt right? When had she ever taken a chance that was not carefully calculated? When had she ever let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved something beautiful? She opened her eyes. Okay, Dominic blinked. Okay, let us get married. His smile could have lit up the entire Riviera. The chapel interior was surprisingly elegant, all white flowers and candlelight. An elderly officiant greeted them with the weary patience of someone who had seen thousands of couples make this decision in various states of intoxication. Isla barely remembered the ceremony itself. It passed in a blur of whispered vows and trembling hands, but she remembered the moment Dominic slipped the ring on her finger. A diamond surrounded by sapphires, the exact shade of tropical waters. I had it in my pocket, he confessed. I bought it this morning while you were in the bath. I thought her second. The love-making was tender and fierce, gentle and desperate. They learned each other's bodies with the wonder of explorers discovering new territory. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss was a vow. And when they finally fell asleep, tangled in silk sheets with wedding bands still warm on their fingers, Isla felt something she had not experienced since childhood. Safe. She felt safe. Consciousness returned in fragments. First, the headache, a pounding at her temples that suggested the champagne had been a very bad idea. Second, the unfamiliarity. The sheets were too soft. The bed was too big. The light streaming through the windows was too bright. Third, the weight on her left hand, something she had not felt when she went to sleep on the Aurora 2 days ago. Isla opened her eyes. The ring caught the morning light, throwing tiny rainbows across the ceiling, a diamond, sapphires beautiful and terrifying and absolutely real. No. She sat up too quickly, her head swimming. The room was palatial, marble floors, fresh flowers. A view of a harbour that was definitely not the one she had left, Monaco. They had gone to Monaco. A warm weight shifted beside her, and Isla's heart stopped entirely. Dominic Ashford lay sprawled across silk sheets, his dark hair mussed, his sculpted chest rising and falling in sleep. He looked younger in repose, softer somehow. The lines of tension she had noticed at the gala were smoothed away, and on his hand, matching hers, a platinum wedding band. No. Her movement woke him. Dominic's eyes opened, that Atlantic grey-green Italy sharp, despite what must have been an equally brutal hangover. His gaze found her hand. His expression froze. Isla. His voice emerged as a rasp. She could not form words. Instead, she reached for the nightstand, knocking over an empty champagne bottle in her haste. Beneath it, tucked like a dirty secret, lay a marriage certificate. Their signatures were unmistakable, hers loopy and excited, his bold and certain, both slightly shakier than usual. "I think we did," she whispered. For a long moment neither moved. The weight of what they had done pressed down on them like the ocean depths she knew so well. Then Isla launched herself from the bed. She grabbed the sheet, wrapping it around her body as she paced. Her dress from the gala lay crumpled on the floor. Her shoes were somewhere near the door, evidence of a night she could barely remember. "This is insane," she said, her voice rising. "We cannot be married. We met yesterday, 2 days ago, however long it has been. This is not real. This cannot be happening." Dominic sat up slowly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. 16 hours ago, technically. "If we count from the gala, this is not funny, Dominic. I am not laughing." His voice was remarkably calm. "I am processing." Process faster. She felt hysteria clawing at her throat. Everything she had worked for flashed through her mind. The years of struggle, the sacrifices, the careful building of a reputation in a field dominated by men who looked for any excuse to dismiss her. "I have a research expedition leaving in 3 weeks, she continued, her words tumbling over each other. "The most important expedition of my career. I am documenting species that no human has ever seen. I cannot be married to a shipping magnate. Do you have any idea how that looks?" "How it looks?" She spun to face him. "My entire field is fighting against companies like yours. I spend my days documenting the damage that commercial shipping does to marine ecosystems. And now I am married to one of the biggest names in the industry. They will think I sold out. They will think I married you for funding. They will think." She could not finish. The tears came, hot and humiliating. Dominic was beside her before she could react. His hands were gentle on her shoulders, steadying. "Breathe," he said. "Just breathe." She had not realized she had stopped. "We will figure this out," he continued, his voice a steadying anchor, annulment, divorce. "Whatever needs to happen. I am not going to trap you in something you did not want." The sincerity in his expression made her chest ache. "You must have done this before, right?" She laughed weakly. "Vegas wedding disasters are basically a billionaire, rite of passage." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "First time, actually. I am usually the cautious one. Contracts reviewed 3 times, due diligence on every decision." He paused, something shifting in his eyes. "I have never done anything remotely this impulsive in my entire life." "Then why now?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why me?" For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Really looked, with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. "Because you were honest," he said finally. "Because you talked to me like I was a person, not a portfolio. Because when you described the ocean, I felt like I was breathing for the first time in years." He reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. "Because something in you called to something in me, and I was too tired of being alone to ignore it." Isla wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the reasons this was impossible, all the ways it could not work. But he was looking at her with such vulnerability, such raw, unguarded hope, and she remembered what it felt like to be seen, truly seen. For the first time in her life, "What do we do now?" she whispered. "No," Dominic said, "we have breakfast, and we talk, and we figure out what happens next together." Breakfast arrived on a silver cart, laid out on the terrace with a view of the harbour. Neither of them ate much, but the ritual of it, the civilized normalcy of coffee and croissants, helped calm the chaos swirling between them. "My legal team can have annulment papers drafted within hours," Dominic said, his business voice firmly in place. "We can handle this quietly. No one needs to know." "Good." Isla wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, needing the warmth. "That is good." A pause stretched between them, filled with things neither quite said. "Unless," Dominic began, then stopped. Sound azarc candiabaus. He set down his cup with deliberate care. There is going to be press attention. Monaco's officials are not exactly known for discretion, and my family name tends to attract interest. Isla's stomach dropped, meaning that within hours our marriage would be public knowledge. Billionaires, drunken nihilers, drunken mistake. Gold digger accusations. Your research funding suddenly becoming complicated. Your foundation would not pull funding over this. Isla protested, but doubt crept into her voice. My foundation, no. But my family's board of directors, his jaw tightened. They have been looking for reasons to oust me for years. A scandal like this, impulsive, reckless, marrying a stranger, it gives them ammunition. So what are you suggesting? Dominic met her eyes. 6 months. We stay married for 6 months, present a united front. After that, we amicably separate, citing the challenges of merging our different worlds. No scandal, no damaged reputations, no pulled funding. Isla stared at him. You are asking me to live a lie. I am asking you to live an opportunity. He leaned forward, intensity radiating from every line of his body. 6 months of access to resources you have never had, any equipment you need, any expedition you want to join, any research paper that requires funding. It is yours. The offer was staggering. Isla thought of the thermal cameras she had been begging for, the deep-sea submersible time that was always allocated elsewhere, the grant applications rejected year after year because she did not have the right connections. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Something vulnerable flickered across his features before he masked it. Time. 6 months to restructure the board, to prove to my family that I can handle responsibility. He hesitated. And perhaps a chance to figure out why a woman I barely know made me feel more alive in one night than I have felt in years. No, my beautiful family, I need to pause here and ask you something. If you were Isla, what would you do? Would you take this deal? Would you walk away? Drop a comment below and tell me your answer. I really want to know what you think. And if you are already invested in this story, if you are already feeling what Isla is feeling, then hit that like button. Let me know this story is speaking to your heart. No, let us continue, because this is where everything gets complicated. Isla stared at Dominic across the breakfast table, her mind racing. 6 months, 180 days. 4,320 hours. Surely that was enough time to save her career, to secure the funding she needed, to walk away with everything she had ever wanted. And yet, I have conditions, she said. Dominic's eyebrows rose, but something like respect flickered in his expression. I expected nothing less. This is not a business merger. If we do this, we do it as a real relationship. No separate residences, no living separate lives. Surprise flickered across his face. You would move into my penthouse. Yes, I will maintain my work on the Aurora, but I will live with you. I want a real chance to know if what I felt that night was real, or just champagne and fantasy. Agreed. And no prenup. This clearly startled him. Isla, my assets are... I do not want your money, Dominic, she interrupted firmly. No, beyond what you have already offered for my research. If this does not work out, I walk away with exactly what we agreed. Nothing more. Why is this important to you? Because I need to know you are not protecting yourself from me at every turn, that you are as vulnerable in this as I am. He studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. All right, no prenup. One more thing. Isla held his gaze. Do not treat me like I am made of glass. I do not need protecting from your world. I need honesty, even when it is difficult. That works both ways, he countered. I want to know the real Isla. No, just the polished scientist who presents at conferences. The real me is not always pretty, she warned. Dominic's smile deepened. I think I can handle it. Isla extended her hand. 6 months, starting today. Instead of shaking her hand, Dominic took it gently. He raised it to his lips and pressed a kiss to her palm. Mrs. Ashford, he murmured against her skin. The title sent a shiver through her. No, entirely unpleasant. Dominic arranged for a private plane to return them to New York. As Monaco disappeared beneath the clouds, Isla stared at the ring on her finger and wondered what she had just agreed to. At the airport, he pulled her into a kiss that left her breathless. "I will see you at home," he said, the word home feeling strange and new. Home. She was going home, to a penthouse she had never seen. With a husband she barely knew. What had she done? The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings. The elevator opened directly into a living room larger than her entire cabin on the Aurora floor. The ceiling windows framed the city like a living painting. Modern art hung on walls that looked like they belonged in a museum. Everything was sleek and expensive and utterly impersonal. "Welcome home," said the woman waiting in the foyer. She was middle-aged, efficient-looking, with kind eyes. "I am Margaret. I manage the household. Mr. Ashford asked me to help you settle in." "Thank you." Isla felt lost, completely out of her depth. "Your things have been delivered from the ship." Margaret's voice was gentle, as if she understood. "Would you like me to show you to the master suite?" The master suite, where she would be sleeping with her husband. "Yes, please." The bedroom was dominated by a bed that could have fit 6 people comfortably. The walk-in closet was larger than her old apartment. Her few belongings, packed hastily before she left for the gala, looked pathetic hanging in all that empty space. "Mr. Ashford asked me to arrange for a personal shopper," Margaret said, "to help you select appropriate wardrobe for his events." Appropriate. Because her consignment shop dress was not appropriate. Because she did not fit into this world. "That will not be necessary," she said, more sharply than she intended. Then, softening, "I am sorry. I am just overwhelmed." Margaret's expression warmed. "I understand, Mrs. Ashford. This must all be very sudden." "You could say that, if I may." The older woman hesitated. "Mr. Ashford has never brought anyone to this apartment before. In the 5 years I have worked for him, you are the first." Isla did not know what to say to that. Dominic arrived that evening, shedding his corporate armor at the door. In jeans and a simple shirt, he looked almost approachable, almost normal. "How are you settling in?" he asked, finding her on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "It is a lot," she admitted. He came to stand beside her, close but not touching. "We can redecorate, if you like. Make it feel more like home. It is beautiful, it is just." She struggled to find the words. "It does not feel like anywhere I belong." Dominic was quiet for a moment. "I know what you mean," he said finally. "I bought this place 5 years ago. I have never felt at home here either." "Then why do you stay?" "Because I was waiting for something. Someone. A reason to make it feel like more than just a place to sleep between meetings." He turned to face her, his expression unexpectedly vulnerable. "Maybe that is what we can do together. Make it feel like somewhere we both belong." The first weeks passed in a blur of adjustment. Isla learned the rhythms of Dominic's world, the early morning calls, the late-night meetings, the constant demands of an empire that never slept. In return, he learned hers. He visited the Aurora on weekends, trading his tailored suits for casual clothes. He learned to identify species from her underwater photographs. He sat beside her during long hours of data analysis, asking questions that proved he was actually paying attention. Slowly, her presence began marking the penthouse. Marine biology books appeared on the coffee table. A collection of sea glass from her dives lined the windowsill. The smell of her shampoo lingered in the bathroom they now shared. And every night they talked, really talked, in a way neither had experienced before. She told him about her worst foster placement, the one that had taught her never to trust anyone who said they loved her. He told her about the father who had died disappointed in him, leaving behind a company and a legacy he had never wanted. "We are both running from something," she observed one evening as they lay tangled on the couch, a documentary about ocean life playing unwatched on the television. "Or running toward something," he countered, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "Maybe we have been running toward each other all along." "That is very romantic." She smiled against his chest. "I did not know you were a romantic. I did not either until you." The first time they made love in the penthouse, it was different from their wedding night. This time they were sober. This time They knew what they were choosing. Afterward, lying in each other's arms as the city glittered below them, Isla felt something shift. This was real. Whatever had started as an arrangement was becoming something else entirely, and that terrified her more than anything. 3 weeks into the arrangement, Isla received the call that would test everything. She was in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee with a machine that had more settings than her research equipment, when her phone rang. Dr. Mercer. The voice belonged to Dr. Patricia Reynolds, one of the most influential figures in marine biology. We have been watching your work with great interest, your thermal vent documentation in particular. Isla set down her coffee cup, her hands suddenly shaking. Thank you. That means a great deal coming from you. Which is why I am calling with an offer. National Geographic is putting together an expedition. Deep-sea ecosystems, undocumented species, the kind of research that happens once in a lifetime. Isla's heart hammered. She had dreamed of this, prayed for it, worked toward it since she was a teenager collecting shells on polluted beaches. We would like you to be our lead photographer and marine biologist, Dr. Reynolds continued. 2 months in the Pacific, complete creative control, unlimited resources. She could barely breathe. There is a catch, of course. The expedition leaves in 6 weeks, and we require complete commitment. No distractions, no divided attention. 6 weeks. That was barely enough time, and 2 months away would mean leaving Dominic for the bulk of their arrangement. Can I have some time to consider? Of course, but not long. We need an answer by the end of the week. She was still standing in the kitchen, staring at nothing, when Dominic found her. What happened? He asked, immediately registering her expression. His hands found her shoulders. Isla, what is wrong? Nothing is wrong. Everything is. I do not know. She told him about the call, about the opportunity, about the timing that could not be worse. When she finished, she expected him to be upset, to remind her of their agreement, to point out that disappearing for 2 months was not exactly living as a united front. Instead, he smiled. That is incredible, he said. Congratulations, Dominic. Did you hear what I said? 2 months, in the middle of our arrangement. I heard. He cupped her face in his hands. And I am telling you that you should go, but no buts. This is what you have worked your entire life for. This is your dream. I would never ask you to sacrifice it for anything, especially not for me. The tenderness in his voice made her eyes sting. What about the board? Your family? The whole reason we are doing this is to present a united front. Then we will be united from a distance. He brushed his thumbs across her cheeks. I will visit when I can. We will call every day. And when you come back, we will figure out the rest together. You would really do that? Let me leave for 2 months. Dominic's expression grew serious. Isla, your passion for the ocean is part of why I love you. I would never cage a bird meant to soar. She froze. Love. He had said love. He seemed to realize it at the same moment. Something like fear flickered across his features. He started, but she stopped him with a kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she rested, forehead against his. I am scared, she whispered. This feels too good to be real. I am scared too. He pulled her closer, but I would rather be terrified with you than safe without you. The next 6 weeks passed in a whirly-burly and a pechow. Isla threw herself into logistics, equipment, checks, coordination with the National Geographic team. But every evening she came home to Dominic, to dinners they cooked together, badly, conversations that stretched deep into the night, to a connection that grew stronger with every passing day. 3 days before her departure, Dominic surprised her. Come with me, he said, taking her hand. Where? It is a surprise. The helicopter touched down on a small island off the main coast. In the center, illuminated by the setting sun, stood a building unlike anything Isla had ever seen. Modern and elegant, it rose from the landscape like it had grown there naturally. Glass walls framed the ocean view. Solar panels lined the roof, and through the windows she could see state-of-the-art laboratory equipment. What is this? She whispered. The Isla Mercer Marine Research Center. He squeezed her hand. or it will be, when it is finished, your legacy, your dream, funded in perpetuity, no matter what happens between us. Dominic, I cannot, you can. He turned her to face him. This is not a gift, Isla. It is recognition of your work, of what you will accomplish, of the change you will create in this world. She was crying now, openly, out. He wiped her tears away with gentle thumbs. When I am 90 years old, he said softly, when I am looking back at my life and asking what I did that mattered, I want to point to this. I want to say that I helped the woman I love change the woman. World, the woman you love, the woman I love, he confirmed. I know it is insane, I know it has only been weeks, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into the press of her lips, every fear and hope and impossible dream. I love you too, she whispered against his mouth, and I am terrified. Then let us be terrified together. Their goodbye at the airport was exactly as difficult as she had expected. 2 months, she said, holding on to his lapels like she could anchor him to her. 2 months, he echoed, and then the rest of our lives. The kiss he gave her was long and deep and full of promises. As she walked through security, Isla looked back once. He was still standing there, watching her with that expression. She was only beginning to understand. Come back to me, he had texted before she even reached the gate. Always, she typed back, and realized she meant it. The Pacific Ocean stretched endless and blue beneath the research vessel Odyssey. Isla stood at the bow, watching the sun sink toward the horizon in a blaze of orange and gold. 2 weeks into the expedition, and every day had exceeded her wildest expectations. Hydrothermal vents, teeming with life forms never before documented, bioluminescent creatures that created their own galaxies in the deep darkness, ecosystems so fragile and beautiful they brought tears to her eyes. She documented everything, photographed species that would bear her name, made discoveries that would reshape the field's understanding of deep-sea biology. But every night, alone in her cabin, she ached for Dominic. They talked every day, navigating the 12-hour time difference with the determination of 2 people, unwilling to let distance break them. He told her about the board meetings and the business challenges. She told him about the wonders she was witnessing in the depths. I miss you, she said one night, curled in her narrow bunk with the satellite phone pressed to her ear. I did not expect to miss you this much. I miss you too. His voice was warm despite the static. But you are doing exactly what you were meant to do. I can hear it in your voice. When I am down there in the deep, I think about you. I think about coming home. A pause. Then his voice thick with emotion. Home. I like the sound of that. 4 weeks in, the expedition reached its most critical phase. A dive to a vent system deeper than any they had yet explored. Isla would be leading the team personally. Be careful, Dominic said during their call the night before. I know that sounds ridiculous, coming from someone who has never done anything remotely dangerous, but please come back to me. Always, she promised, always. The dive was extraordinary. She descended into blackness, her lights illuminating a world that had never known the sun. Creatures drifted past like ghosts. The vent itself pulsed with heat and life, a testament to the planet's restless core. She was documenting a new species of tube-worm when she felt it. A sudden weakness in her limbs, lightheadedness that had nothing to do with the depth. Something was wrong. She signaled to her dive partner, but the darkness was closing in. Her vision narrowed to a point. The last thing she saw was the bioluminescent glow of creatures she had dedicated her life to protecting. The last thing she thought was his name, Dominic. She woke in the ship's medical bay, Dr. Chen's worried face hovering above her. What happened? She managed, her throat raw. Decompression sickness. You pushed too hard. Stayed too deep too long. Dr. Chen's expression was stern. You could have died, Isla. The expedition is fine. We got all the footage, but you are done diving for the rest of the trip. No, negotiable. The tears came before she could stop them. Everything she had worked for, the chance of a lifetime, cut short because she had been careless. Her phone had been ringing for hours by the time she was allowed to use it. 17 missed calls from Dominic. When she finally connected, his voice was frantic. "I am on my way," he said before she could speak. "I have already chartered a plane." "Dominic, no. I am fine. The doctors said." "I do not care what the doctors said. I am coming." And somehow, impossibly, 3 days later, he was there. He burst into the medical bay like a storm, still wearing the suit he must have been in when he got her call. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were wild with fear. Then he saw her propped up in the narrow bunk, pale but alive, and something in him broke Isla. Her name was a prayer on his lips. She held out her arms, and he was there, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. "I thought I lost you," he whispered against her hair. "When they called, when they said there was an accident, I thought, I am here." She clung to him just as tightly. "I am here, and I am not going anywhere." He stayed for a week, sleeping in a chair beside her bunk, helping her walk when she was strong enough, reading to her when she was not. The expedition leadership was furious at first, a civilian on their research vessel. But Dominic had a way of smoothing things over, and when they saw the way he looked at Isla, the way she looked at Isla, him, even the most cynical scientists, softened. "Why did you come?" she asked one night as they sat on the deck, wrapped in a blanket, watching stars that seemed close enough to touch. "Because I love you," he said simply, "and when the person you love is in danger, you go, no matter what it costs. You reorganized your entire company to be here. I saw the emails on your phone." Dominic shrugged. "The company will survive. You are more important." She turned to face him, her expression serious. "This is real, is it not?" she said. "This is not just an arrangement anymore." "It stopped being an arrangement the moment I saw you across that ballroom," he replied. "I was just too scared to admit it." When the expedition finally returned to port, she stood on the dock, watching the Odyssey being unloaded, her wheelchair-bound status making her feel useless. But Dominic was beside her, his hand warm in hers, and somehow that made everything better. "I want to renew our vows," she said. He turned to look at her, surprise and hope warring on his features. "What?" "When I was in that decompression chamber," she continued, "when I thought I might not make it, I realized something. I do not want this to be an arrangement. I do not want it to be something we can walk away from in 6 months. I want forever, real forever. If you still want that too." His answer was a kiss that told her everything she needed to know. They returned to New York 3 weeks later, Isla fully recovered and more in love than ever. The penthouse felt different now, warmer, more like home. Her books lined the shelves, her photographs hung on the walls. The sea glass collection had grown to fill an entire cabinet. She was happy, genuinely, terrifyingly happy, which was, of course, when everything fell apart. The tabloid arrived first. Isla was in the kitchen, making the coffee she had finally mastered, when her phone exploded with notifications, text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. With trembling fingers, she opened the first message. "I am so sorry." Read the text from her colleague at the Aurora. "Is it true? Is what true?" She opened the news app and felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Ashford Ayre's secret affair. Marriage a calculated scheme while wife at sea. The photographs were everywhere. Dominic emerging from a hotel in Paris, a blonde woman beside him, his hand at the small of her back, their faces close together, intimate, familiar. The woman was Victoria Crane, his ex-fiancée, the woman Dominic had almost married before Isla. She stared at the photographs until they blurred, until she could not tell if the moisture in her eyes was tears or simply the inability to process what she was seeing. He had promised. He had promised to be honest, to be faithful, to be real, and all along he had been with her. She did not remember leaving the penthouse, did not remember the taxi ride to her old apartment in Brooklyn, did not remember climbing the stairs to the place that had once been hers before she had been foolish enough to believe in fairy-tale tales. All she knew was that she was sitting on the floor of an empty room, sobbing so hard she could not breathe, and her phone would not stop ringing. 17 missed calls, 17 photographs of her husband with another woman, 17 broken promises. She answered on the 18th call. Isla, his voice was desperate. Thank God. Let me explain. Those photographs are not what they look like. The laugh that escaped her was ugly, raw. That is what they all say, Dominic, every lying husband since the beginning of time. I am not lying to you. I have never lied to you. Then why? Her voice broke. Why was I the last to know? Why did I find out from a tabloid that you were in Paris with Victoria while I was 300 feet underwater, nearly dying? Silence. Devastating, damning silence. I was going to tell you, he finally said. When you got back, I did not want to worry you while you were recovering. Worry me. Isla was screaming now. Worry me about what, exactly? The fact that you were meeting your ex-fiancé in secret. The fact that while I was falling in love with you, you were planning your escape. No, that is not. Then what, Dominic? What possible explanation could make those photographs? Okay. She heard him take a breath, struggling to find words. Victoria came to me, he said. Her family's company is failing. She wanted to propose a merger, a business arrangement that would save her father's legacy. A business arrangement, Isla repeated flatly. That required her hand on your back, her face inches from yours. The photographers were positioned deliberately. He was speaking faster now, urgently. Victoria knew exactly where they would be. She staged the entire thing to create that narrative convenient. Isla, I love you. The words were ragged. I love you. I would never betray you. You have to believe me. I do not have to believe anything. She hung up. The apartment was cold, dark, her old life pressing in on her from all sides. She had known better, had known from the beginning that this was too good to be true, that men like Dominic Ashford did not fall in love with marine biologists from Brooklyn, that fairy tales were for children and fools, and she had been the biggest fool of all. Hours passed. The light shifted across the worn floorboards. Her phone fell silent. She was still sitting on the floor, numb and hollow, when the buzzer rang. She knew it was him, knew with absolute certainty that he was standing outside, waiting. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Let him stand there until he understood that some betrayals could not be fixed. But another part, the part that remembered the way he looked at her in the deep-sea darkness, the part that still felt his arms around her in the hospital, needed to hear him lie to her face. She buzzed him up. When the door opened, the sight of him nearly undid her resolve. Dominic looked wrecked. His normally impeccable appearance was disheveled. His eyes were haunted. He looked like a man who had not slept in days. Isla, relief and anguish mingled in his voice. Thank God. I have been looking everywhere. Well, she crossed her arms over her chest. You found me. Congratulations. He took a step toward her, stopping when she flinched. The photographs, he said, they are not what they look like. I know what I saw. Dominic, no. You saw what Victoria wanted you to see. He reached into his jacket, pulling out his phone. Bantam. Here he scrolled to his calendar. My appointment with the realtor. Here he opened his email. The follow-up from the architect with recommendations for an apartment renovation. An apartment, Isla's voice was flat. You were looking at an apartment, a home, he corrected, for us. In Paris, for when you perform there, I wanted it to be a surprise. You brought Victoria to help you buy us a home. She is an architect, Isla, one of the best in Europe. She came along to offer professional input on structural possibilities. That is all. And the hotel. The realtor recommended we see a suite there for inspiration. The photographs were taken as we were leaving. Isla shook her head. It sounds too convenient, too perfect. I know. Dominic stepped closer. I know how it looks. I know how she wanted it to look. What are you saying? I am saying that Victoria has been working with the board members who want me removed. I am saying that this entire scandal was manufactured to destroy both of us. Proof. Isla's voice was barely audible. Do you have proof? Yes. He pulled out a folder he had been carrying, handing it to her with trembling hands. Documentation of Victoria's meetings with hostile board members, recordings of conversations where she explicitly planned to destroy. And these were her words, that oceanic gold digger, financial, Records showing the tabloid was paid through a shell company connected to her family. Isla stared at the documents, page after page of betrayal, but not Dominic's betrayal. Victoria's. Why, she whispered, why would she do this? Because she wants what she cannot have. Dominic's voice was raw. She wants me, she wants the company, and she thought if she could make you doubt us, you would leave, and you would go back to her. I would never. His hands found hers. Never, Isla. You have to know that. She looked at him, at the man who had flown across the world when she was hurt, who had stayed beside her hospital bed for a week, who had built her a research center just because she dreamed of it. And she made a choice. I believe you, she said. The relief that flooded his features was almost painful to witness. But this is not over, she continued. Victoria is still out there. The board is still hostile, and I will not hide while she tries to destroy us. What are you suggesting? Isla squared her shoulders. I am suggesting that we fight. The Thor Industries annual gala was the most prestigious event on the New York social calendar. Every major player in shipping, finance, and philanthropy would be in attendance. The press would be out in force, and Victoria Crane would be there, confident that her scheme had succeeded. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Isla stood before the mirror in the penthouse, examining her reflection. The gown Dominic had commissioned for her was stunning, deep blue like the ocean at twilight, scattered with tiny crystals that caught the light like bioluminescent creatures in the deep. She looked like someone who belonged in his world. More importantly, she felt like someone who belonged there. You are breathtaking. Dominic appeared behind her, his reflection joining hers in the mirror. Are you ready? I have faced apex predators, decompression sickness, and academic review boards, she said, turning to face him. I think I can handle a room full of socialites. His smile was proud. That is my wife. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, transformed into a winter wonderland of silver and blue. Hundreds of New York's elite circulated beneath the vaulted ceilings, their jewelry catching the light from thousands of candles. Isla and Dominic made their entrance arm in arm, heads high, faces composed. The whispers started immediately. There she is, that is the wife. I heard she knew about the affair, the whole time gold digger, social climber. How does she dare show her face? Isla heard every word, and smiled anyway. Because she knew something they did not. In 1 hour. In 1 hour, everything was going to change. Near the champagne fountain, Victoria Crane held court. She was stunning in emerald green, her golden hair perfectly coiffed, her smile razor-sharp. Dominic, she purred as they approached, and Isla, how unexpected to see you both here tonight. Why unexpected? Dominic asked pleasantly. We are celebrating the Foundation's work, just as we do every year. Well, Victoria's eyes flickered to Isla. Given the unfortunate publicity, I assumed you would want to keep a low profile. Isla stepped forward, her own smile as sharp as a blade. Yes, she said. It is such a shame how the media twists innocent situations, almost as if someone deliberately tipped off photographers to create a specific narrative. Color bloomed on Victoria's perfect cheekbones. What an imagination you have. I did not miss my calling. Isla held her gaze. I am exactly where I am meant to be, with my husband.
Before Victoria could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. Thor. Senator Blackwood appeared, his shrewd gaze taking in the tableau. There are some investors who have been asking after you. Mind if I steal you away? After Dominic reluctantly departed with the senator, Victoria's mask slipped entirely. You think you have won, she hissed, her voice too low for anyone else to hear. You think you can just show up here and act like you belong? I think, Isla replied calmly, that I have evidence of every payment you made to that tabloid, every meeting you had with hostile board members, every conversation where you discussed destroying my reputation. Victoria's face went white. You are bluffing. Try me. They stared at each other for a long moment, predator to predator. Then Victoria laughed, a brittle, ugly sound. You have no idea what you are up against. I have been playing this game since before you learned which fork to use at dinner. Maybe, Isla conceded. But I have something you do not. What is that? A husband who loves me. And nothing you can do will ever change that. A commotion near the podium drew their attention. Dominic had taken the stage. He was not scheduled to speak until much later in the evening. But there he was, adjusting the microphone, his expression determined. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began. "I apologize for the interruption. I had planned to save my remarks for later. But there is something I need to address." The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on the man at the podium. "Many of you have seen the recent tabloid coverage suggesting impropriety in my marriage." His voice was steady and clear. "I want to be absolutely clear. Those insinuations are categorically false." A murmur ran through the crowd. Victoria stood frozen, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. The photographs show a business meeting regarding Thor Industries' European expansion. Nothing more, nothing less. Dominic's gaze found Isla in the audience. His eyes never left hers as he continued. "I have spent my life building a company, brick by brick, deal by deal. But nothing I have ever built compares to the relationship I found with my wife Isla." Tears pricked Isla's eyes. "She reminds me daily that true wealth is not measured in stock portfolios or property holdings. True wealth is measured in the courage to be vulnerable, to love without reservation, to choose someone every single day, even when it is hard." The room had gone utterly silent. Hundreds of New York's elite, transfixed by the raw emotion pouring from a man they had always considered coldly calculating. "I would sacrifice every company," Dominic declared, his voice ringing through the hall. "Every building, every dollar to my name before I would betray her trust." His gaze flickered briefly to Victoria. "And to anyone who would try to come between us, you should know that you are not just fighting against me. You are fighting against the strongest force I have ever known. The love between two people who chose each other when the odds were against them." Isla felt rather than saw Victoria slip away, defeat written in every line of her body. The crowd erupted in applause as Dominic stepped down from the podium. He moved purposefully through the throng, parting the sea of bodies like Moses himself. When he reached her, Isla was already moving into his arms. They held each other in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, and neither cared. "That was quite a speech," she whispered against his ear. "I meant every word." "I know." She pulled back to look at his face. "I love you, Dominic Ashford." His answering smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I love you too, Isla Ashford. Now let us go home." That night, back in the penthouse that finally felt like home, they made love with desperate tenderness. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss was a vow. They had fought through scandal and betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets that still smelled of them, Isla traced the planes of his face in the moonlight. "I never want to be without you," she said softly. "You never will be." He kissed her forehead. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." She believed him. For the first time in her life, she believed someone without reservation. And that was the greatest gift of all. 6 months. That was how long they had agreed to stay married. 6 months of pretending, of presenting a united front, of figuring out if what they felt was real. The 6 months had come and gone without either of them mentioning it, because it was no longer relevant. Their first anniversary arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Isla woke to find Dominic already awake beside her, watching her with that soft expression she had come to love. "Good morning, wife," he murmured. "Good morning, husband." She stretched, luxuriating in the warmth of their bed. "What are we doing today?" "I have a surprise." "Another one?" She laughed. "You know I am running out of wall space for marine research centers. This is different." The helicopter ride was short, bringing them to a familiar stretch of coastline. But instead of landing on shore, the pilot lowered them toward a boat waiting in the harbor. "A dive vessel." "What is this?" Isla asked as they transferred aboard. "Your anniversary present," Dominic replied. "I pulled some strings with the National Geographic team. They agreed to let us visit the thermal vent site you documented during the expedition. The one where I almost died. The one where you discovered 3 new species and changed our understanding of deep-sea ecosystems," he corrected. "The one you told me about every night for weeks afterward. I thought you might want to see it again. Properly this time." She stared at him, overwhelmed. "You arranged for us to dive to a hydrothermal vent. On our anniversary. Is that too much?" He suddenly looked uncertain. "I thought. You said it was the most beautiful thing you had ever seen. I wanted to see it through your eyes." Dominic. She pulled him into a kiss that said everything words could not. This is perfect. The descent took nearly an hour. They went together, suspended in darkness, their lights creating small circles of illumination in the infinite black. Dominic held her hand the entire way down. And then, suddenly, the vent system appeared. It was exactly as she remembered. Towering structures of mineral deposits, venting superheated water that shimmered like heat rising from summer pavement. Creatures drifted past, impossibly delicate, impossibly beautiful. But this time, she was not alone. This time, the man she loved was beside her, seeing what she saw, feeling what she felt. They floated there for what felt like hours. No words were needed. The wonder was enough. When they finally surfaced, Dominic reached into his wetsuit and produced a small waterproof case. "I wanted to give you this down there," he said, "but I was afraid of dropping it." Inside was a ring. A band of platinum and gold, intertwined like waves, set with a sapphire that matched the depths they had just visited. "It is not to replace your wedding ring," he explained quickly. "It is a renewal, a recommitment, a promise that what started by accident in Monaco is something I now choose with my whole heart." Isla was crying. She did not care. "Yes," she whispered, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. "Yes, yes, yes." They renewed their vows that evening on the deck of the dive vessel, surrounded by the crew who had become their family for the day. There was no Elvis impersonator this time. No neon lights. Just the setting sun painting the ocean in shades of fire, and two people promising forever. "I, Dominic, take you, Isla, to be my wife, my partner, my equal. I promise to love you through every triumph and struggle, to support your dreams as fiercely as my own, to choose you every single day for the rest of our lives. And I, Isla, take you, Dominic, to be my husband, my anchor, my home. I promise to love you with everything I am, to walk beside you through whatever comes, to never stop believing in what we have built together." The kiss that sealed their vows was soft and sweet and full of promise. And when the sun finally set, they stood together at the rail, watching stars appear one by one in the velvet sky. "I used to think home was a place," Isla said quietly. "A location, 4 walls and a roof. And now I know home is a person." She turned to face him. "You are my home, Dominic. Wherever you are is where I belong." He pulled her close, resting his chin on her head. "I spent my whole life building things," he said. "Companies, investments, a legacy I thought would make me matter. But you made me realize that the only thing that matters is love. The only legacy worth leaving is the people whose lives we touch." They stood together as the stars wheeled overhead. Two people who had found each other against impossible odds. Two lonely souls who had become something greater together. 5 years later, on that same deck, their twins would take their first steps. A boy with his father's serious eyes. A girl with her mother's wild auburn hair. Both already showing signs of their parents' love for the sea. The Isla Mercer Marine Research Center would become one of the most prestigious in the world. Young scientists from backgrounds like Isla's would find their futures there. Species she discovered would bear her name in textbooks for generations. And Ashford Maritime would become the global leader in sustainable shipping. Not because it was profitable, though it was, but because Dominic Ashford had learned that some things mattered more than money. But all of that was in the future. In that moment, on the deck of a dive vessel anchored above the thermal vents that had brought them together, Isla and Dominic had everything they needed. Each other, and the knowledge that what had begun as an accident had become the most deliberate choice of their lives. My beautiful, beautiful family. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. I hope this story touched your heart the way it touched mine when I first discovered it. You know, sometimes in life, the most unexpected moments become our greatest blessings. Isla thought she made the biggest mistake of her life when she woke up married to a stranger. But that mistake turned out to be the beginning of a love story that changed both their lives forever. If there is one thing I want you to take from this story, it is this. Do not be afraid to take chances on love. Do not be afraid to be vulnerable. Do not be afraid to trust someone with your heart, even when it is scary. Because the greatest loves, the ones that last forever, they do not come from playing it safe. They come from being brave enough to leap into the unknown and trust that someone will catch you. If this story made you cry, if it made you believe in love again, if it made you want to call someone you care about and tell them how you feel, then I have done my job. Please, if you have not already, hit that subscribe button and join our family here at Mr. David Love Stories. We have so many more stories to share with you. Stories of love and hope and redemption. Stories that will make you laugh and cry and believe in happy endings. And leave me a comment below. I want to hear from you. Tell me what you thought of Isla and Dominic's story. Tell me about the moment that made you cry. Tell me about the love story in your own life. Until next time, my beautiful family, remember this. Love is not about perfect circumstances. It is about choosing someone every single day, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. This has been Mr. David, and I will see you in the next story. Take care of yourselves and each other. Goodbye.